When I finally played the recording for my son, my hands were shaking. 20 years. 20 years of biting my tongue, making excuses, convincing myself I was overreacting. 20 years of my daughter-in-law Linda's cruelty that I'd never been able to prove because she was always so careful, always made sure no one else heard, always made it look like I was the problem. But now I had evidence. 43 recordings on my phone of Linda saying things that would make anyone's blood run cold. I thought once Marcus heard them, he'd finally understand, finally see what I'd been enduring, finally choose his mother over his wife's lies. I was wrong. He listened to every recording, all 43 of them, sat there stone-faced while his wife's voice came through the speaker calling me worthless, stupid, a burden, a waste of space. And when the last one finished, he looked at me and said, "Mom, she's right. You are too sensitive. Linda's just being honest. Stop trying to break up my marriage." My name is Nanny. I'm 71 years old now, and this is the story of how I endured 2 decades of emotional abuse from my daughter-in-law. How I finally gathered proof of every cruel word, every cutting remark, every moment of torment. How I presented that proof to my son, believing he would protect me. And how he listened to his wife systematically destroying his mother and decided she was the one telling the truth. It started 20 years ago when Marcus brought Linda home for the first time. He was 30 years old, she was 28. He was so proud, so excited, said he'd met the woman he was going to marry. I wanted to love her, wanted to welcome her into our family. My husband Robert and I invited them for dinner. I cooked Marcus's favorite meal, made my grandmother's apple pie, set the table with my good china. Linda walked into our house, and I saw her eyes sweep over everything. Our modest furniture, our old carpet, our family photos on the walls. I saw her nose wrinkle slightly, saw judgment pass across her face. But she smiled and said all the right things, told me dinner smelled wonderful, complimented our home, thanked us for having her. Robert and I were charmed. Marcus was beaming. It seemed perfect. After dinner, I was in the kitchen cleaning up. Linda came in carrying plates. Marcus and Robert were in the living room watching a game. Linda set the plates down and said quietly, "You know Marcus deserves better than this." I turned around confused. Better than what? She gestured around the kitchen. This shabby little life, these old dishes, this ancient kitchen. He grew up poor, and he's worked so hard to rise above it. I'm going to give him the life he deserves, the life you never could. I was stunned, didn't know what to say. She smiled sweetly and walked back to the living room, left me standing there feeling like I'd been slapped. When I came out, she was sitting next to Marcus laughing at something Robert said, acting like nothing had happened. I told myself I must have misunderstood. She couldn't have meant it the way it sounded.
But that was just the beginning. Over the next few months, as Marcus and Linda got more serious, there were more comments. Always when no one else could hear, always delivered with a sweet smile. She'd come over for Sunday dinner and whisper in the hallway, "Must be hard living in such a small house after raising a family here. No wonder Marcus wanted to get out so badly." Or, She'd see photos of Marcus as a child and say quietly, "Poor thing, he looks so shabby in these pictures. You really couldn't afford better clothes." I started to tell Robert about it. He said Linda was just young and tactless, that she didn't mean anything by it, that I was being too sensitive. I tried to tell Marcus. He said Linda adored me, that she talked about how lucky he was to have such a caring mother, that I must be misinterpreting her tone. So I stayed quiet, told myself everyone was right. I was being too sensitive. Marcus and Linda got married a year after they met. It was a lavish wedding that Linda's parents paid for. I wasn't involved in the planning. Linda says she had it under control, didn't need help. The day of the wedding, I wore my best dress, did my hair and makeup carefully, wanted to look nice for my son's big day. In the bridal suite before the ceremony, I went to tell Linda she looked beautiful. She did. She was a stunning bride. She looked at me and her smile faded. "That's what you're wearing?" I said, "Yes, it was my best dress." She said, "It's very matronly." I was hoping Marcus's mother would look more elegant in the photos, but I guess we work with what we have. Then she turned to her bridesmaids and said loudly, "Doesn't matter what the groom's family wears, right? Everyone's looking at the bride anyway." Her bridesmaids laughed. I left the room fighting tears. At the reception, Linda made a toast, talked about how Marcus had overcome so much, how he'd risen above his humble beginnings to become the successful man he was today, how she was so proud to be marrying someone who knew the value of hard work because he'd seen what happens when people don't work hard. Everyone thought it was sweet. I knew it was a dig at me and Robert, at our modest life, at the fact that we never been wealthy. After the wedding, the comments got worse. Marcus and Linda bought a house, a big, expensive house in a wealthy neighborhood. Linda gave me a tour, and in every room, she made a comparison. "This kitchen is 3 times the size of yours. I can actually cook properly here. This is the master bathroom. It has a soaking tub, not like that old shower you have. The guest room is nice, but you probably won't visit much. I know it's a long drive and your old car probably isn't reliable." When Robert and I left that day, I cried in the car. Robert said, "She's just proud of her house. You're taking it personally." I said, "She's trying to hurt me. Can't you see that?" He said, "Why would she do that? She has no reason to hurt you. You're imagining things." So again, I stayed quiet. Again, I told myself I was wrong. The abuse escalated when Linda and Marcus had their first child, my grandson, Owen. I was thrilled to be a grandmother, offered to help any way I could. Linda said she had it covered, had a nanny, didn't need help. But she'd call me for things. "Can you come watch Owen for an hour? The nanny canceled." I'd drop everything and drive over. When I got there, Linda would look at what I was wearing and say, "That's covered in lint. Don't hold the baby in that. Use this blanket." Or, "Your perfume is too strong. It might irritate him. Go wash it off." One time, I was feeding Owen, and Linda said, "You're holding the bottle wrong. God, didn't you raise a child? I thought you'd at least know the basics." I tried to explain I was holding it the way I'd held it for Marcus. She said, "And look how he turned out. Desperate for a mother figure. That's why he married me." I stared at her.
She smiled sweetly and took Owen from my arms. Every visit was like that. Little cuts, little cruelties. Always when Marcus wasn't around. Always designed to make me feel inadequate, unwanted, less than. And if I ever looked upset, she'd say loudly when Marcus came in, "Your mother seems tired. Maybe she should head home and rest," making it look like she was being considerate, making me look weak. When Owen was 2, there was a family birthday party. Lots of people there. Linda's parents, her siblings, some friends, me and Robert. At one point, I was talking to Linda's mother about Owen, just grandmother talk. Linda's mother said something about how much Owen looked like Linda. I agreed and added that he had Marcus's smile. Linda appeared out of nowhere and said, "Actually, he looks nothing like Marcus. Thank God. Marcus was such an unfortunate-looking child. All those bad teeth and that poor posture. I've seen the photos." Robert heard that one. He pulled me aside and said, "That was rude. You should say something to Marcus." I tried. That night I called Marcus and said, "Linda said some hurtful things today about how you looked as a child." He said, "She's joking, Mom. She has a dry humor of sense. You know that." I said, "It didn't feel like a joke." He sighed. "Mom, Linda loves me. She'd never actually be cruel. You're being oversensitive again." That word, oversensitive. I heard it constantly, from Marcus, from Robert, even from my own mind. Was I oversensitive? Was I imagining the cruelty in Linda's words? Was I looking for problems that weren't there? But then Linda would say something so obviously cruel that I knew I wasn't imagining it, and still no one believed me. Robert died 5 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden and devastating. Marcus and Linda came to the house after. Linda hugged me and said all the right things in front of Marcus. Then, when he went to answer the phone, she leaned close and whispered, "At least Robert doesn't have to be embarrassed by you anymore. He can finally rest." I pulled away from her in shock. She smiled and went to comfort Marcus. At Robert's funeral, Linda stood next to Marcus greeting people. I heard her tell someone, "It's so hard on Marcus. He was very close to his father. His mother, well, she's taking it hard because now she has no one. Robert was really the glue holding that relationship together," making it sound like Robert was the only reason Marcus tolerated me, making it sound like I was pathetic and alone. After Robert died, I was alone. Marcus was all I had left, my only child, my only family. And Linda knew it. She used it. She'd call and invite me to dinner. Then when I arrived, she'd say, "Oh, I forgot we had plans tonight. Marcus didn't tell you we had to cancel? Well, you're here now. You can stay for an hour, but then we have to get ready." I'd driven 40 minutes to get there. She knew. She always knew what she was doing. Or she'd invite me for holidays and seat me at the end of the table, away from Marcus, next to people I didn't know, while she sat next to Marcus and held court. If I tried to join a conversation, she'd talk over me. If I told a story, she'd interrupt with a correction that made me look foolish. If I helped in the kitchen, she'd redo whatever I did. "Not quite right, Nanny. Here, let me fix it." Owen got older, started school. I asked if I could pick him up sometimes, spend time with him. Linda said, "I don't think that's a good idea.
Your driving isn't what it used to be. I'd hate for something to happen. My driving was fine. She just didn't want me alone with Owen. Didn't want me to have a relationship with him that didn't go through her. One Christmas, Owen made me a card at school. It said, "I love you, Grandma," with a crayon drawing. I cherished it, hung it on my refrigerator. The next time Linda came to my house, she saw it and said, "Owen makes cards for everyone. His teacher makes them do it. Don't read too much into it. He barely knows who you are." My grandson barely knew who I was because she made it sure of it. I started avoiding family gatherings. It hurt too much. Every visit was a minefield. Every conversation was a trap. Linda would say something cruel, I'd react, and she'd gaslight me into thinking I overreacted. Marcus would side with her. I'd go home feeling crazy, feeling like maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was imagining everything.
But I wasn't imagining it. I knew I wasn't. So 3 years ago, I bought a small voice recorder, one of those tiny ones you can hide in your pocket, and I started recording our conversations. Not all of them, just the times I was alone with Linda, when Marcus wasn't there to hear, when it was just her and me, and her mask could come off. The first recording was at a family dinner at their house. Marcus went outside to grill. Linda and I were in the kitchen. She was making a salad. I offered to help. She said, "You can set the table if you can manage not to mess it up." I said, "Linda, why do you talk to me like that?" She turned and smiled. "Like what, Nanny? I'm just asking you to set the table. Are you feeling okay? You seem confused lately. Maybe we should talk to Marcus about getting you evaluated. Memory problems run in families." She was threatening me, threatening to tell Marcus I was losing my memory, my mind, that I was confused and unreliable. It was gaslighting at its finest, and I had it recorded. I listened to it that night and cried because her tone was so sweet, so concerned. But the words were designed to make me feel unstable, designed to make me question my own sanity. I kept recording every visit, every phone call when I was alone with her. And the recordings were damning. Her calling me worthless, stupid, a burden, telling me Marcus only tolerated me out of obligation, saying I was an embarrassment, that she wished I'd just fade away and stop complicating their lives, that Owen didn't need a grandmother like me, that I had nothing to offer anyone. One recording was particularly brutal. It was at their house. Marcus was at work. Linda had called and said Owen was sick and could I come sit with him while she ran errands. I came over. Owen was fine, playing in his room. Linda had lied to get me there. She sat me down and said, "We need to talk about your future." I asked what she meant. She said, "Marcus and I have been talking. You're getting older. Living alone isn't safe. We think you should sell your house and move into a senior living facility." I said I was only 68 at the time. I was healthy. I didn't need senior living. She said, "Nanny, you're declining. We've noticed. You repeat yourself. You forget things. You're getting frail. It's time to accept reality. Marcus is too kind to say it, but I'll be honest. You need more care than we can provide. A facility is the best option." I said, "There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not declining." She laughed, actually laughed. "Denial is a symptom, you know. The fact that you can't see it proves you need help." She wanted my house, wanted me in a facility where she'd have control over me,
where I'd be even more isolated, even more dependent on Marcus, even more under her thumb. And she wanted to do it by convincing everyone I was losing my mind. I had all of it recorded. Her plan, her manipulation, her cruelty. I collected recordings for 3 years, 43 total. 43 instances of Linda revealing who she really was when no one else was watching. I documented dates, times, contexts, made transcripts, built a case, because I was going to present this to Marcus. I was going to make him listen, make him hear what I'd been hearing for 20 years, make him finally believe me. I planned it carefully. Invited Marcus to lunch. Just him, no Linda. He was hesitant, but agreed. We met at a restaurant. I brought my phone with all the recordings queued up. After we ordered, I said, "Marcus, I need you to listen to something. It's important." He looked wary. "Mom, if this is about Linda again." I said, "Please, just listen. Give me 30 minutes. If after that you still think I'm wrong, I'll never bring it up again." He agreed. I started playing the recordings. The one where she called me worthless. The one where she said I was an embarrassment. The one where she told me Marcus only tolerated me out of obligation. Marcus's face was unreadable. He sat there stone-faced, listening to his wife systematically tear his mother apart. Recording after recording. I watched for a reaction, for horror, for anger on my behalf, for something. When the last recording finished, there was silence. I waited. Finally, Marcus said, "Is that all of them?" I said, "Yes. 43 recordings over 3 years. Proof of everything I'd been telling him. Proof that I wasn't oversensitive or imagining things. Proof that Linda had been abusing me for 20 decades. I waited for him to apologize, to say he believed me, to say he'd confront Linda, to say he'd protect me. Instead, he said, "Mom, I don't know what you want me to say." I said, "I want you to acknowledge that what she's doing is wrong, that she's been cruel to me for 20 years, that you believe me." He sighed. "I believe that you and Linda have tension. I believe you perceive her comments as hurtful. But, Mom, have you considered that maybe she has a point?" I stared at him. "A point? She called me worthless. She said I only tolerate you out of obligation. She told me I should disappear from your lives. What point does she have?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Linda is direct. She says what she thinks. And honestly, Mom, some of what she's saying is not entirely wrong. You are sensitive. You do take things personally. You do have a tendency to create drama." I felt like I'd been slapped. Create drama? Marcus, I just played you 20 years of emotional abuse, and you think I'm creating drama? He said, "It's not abuse, Mom. It's honesty. Maybe it's harsh honesty, but it's honest. Linda sees things you don't want to see. She's trying to help you, trying to be real with you when everyone else just placates you." I said, "She called me stupid. She said I'm an embarrassment. She's trying to convince you I'm losing my mind, so you'll put me in a home. How is any of that trying to help me?" Marcus said, "The stuff about senior living is a legitimate concern. You are getting older. Living alone might not be safe much longer. Linda's just being practical about planning ahead. You're interpreting it as malicious when it's actually caring." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Caring? Did you hear the recordings? Did you hear her tone, her words? He said, I heard someone being blunt with you about hard truths you don't want to hear. Mom, you've always struggled with criticism, ever since I was a kid. Dad used to say you took everything too personally. Linda's just more direct than most people. That doesn't make her abusive. I felt tears coming. 20 years. 20 years of holding this in. 20 years of collecting proof. And my son sat across from me telling me the abuse was actually honesty, that the cruelty was actually caring, that I was the problem for not accepting his wife's hard truths. I said, so you're taking her side? He said, there are no sides, Mom. There's just reality. And the reality is that you and Linda have different communication styles, and you need to accept that. I said, different communication styles? Marcus, she told me she wishes I'd disappear. She said Owen doesn't need me. She called me worthless. He said, in context, she was probably frustrated. You can be difficult, Mom. You know that. You're stubborn. You don't listen. You get your feelings hurt over nothing. Linda deals with a lot from you, and sometimes she vents. That doesn't make her a bad person. I was crying now, full tears. People at other tables were looking. Marcus looked uncomfortable. He said, Mom, please don't make a scene. I said, a scene? Your wife has been abusing me for 20 years, and I played you proof, and you're worried about me making a scene? He said, you're proving her point right now. This is exactly what she means. You're oversensitive, you're dramatic, you blow things out of proportion. I grabbed my phone and my purse, started to leave. Marcus said, Mom, wait, don't leave like this. I turned back. Tell me one thing. Do you believe Linda is cruel to me? He hesitated, then said, I believe you perceive her as cruel. But no, I don't think she intends to be cruel. I think she's honest, and you don't like honesty. I said, then we have nothing more to talk about. And I left. I drove home sobbing. Couldn't see the road through my tears. Had to pull over twice to compose myself. My son had heard proof of his wife's abuse and decided I was the problem. Decided her cruelty was honesty. Decided I was too sensitive to handle the truth. 20 years of torture validated. Not the torture, my tolerance of it. My weakness for letting it hurt me. That was 3 months ago. Marcus has called a few times since, left voicemail saying we need to talk, that he doesn't want to leave things like this, that I'm his mother and he loves me. But he never says he believes me, never says Linda was wrong, never offers to protect me from her. Just says we should work through this. Find a way to get along. Accept our differences. Linda sent me a text last week. It said, Marcus told me about the recordings. I'm so sorry you've been in so much pain over our relationship. I never intended to hurt you. I was just trying to be honest with you because I care. I hope someday you can forgive me for being too blunt. I only want what's best for you and Marcus. The perfect victim, the perfect manipulation, making it sound like she's the bigger person, like I'm the one who needs to forgive her. Marcus wants me to come to Christmas dinner this year. Says Linda has promised to be more mindful of my sensitivity, not to stop being cruel, to be more mindful of how sensitive I am to her honesty. Like the problem is still me, still my reaction, still my inability to handle hard truth. not her 20 years of systematic emotional abuse. I don't know if I'll go. Don't know if I can sit at that table and pretend everything is fine. Pretend that playing my son 43 recordings of his wife abusing me and having him take her side didn't destroy something fundamental between us. Don't know if I can watch her smile sweetly and make comments about how glad she is I could make it, how worried they were about me being alone, how they're here if I need anything. All of it said with that syrupy tone that sounds caring to everyone else and threatening to me. The worst part is I can't even tell anyone. Can't explain to friends or other family because I played my evidence. I showed my proof, and I was told I was wrong, told I was oversensitive, told I was misinterpreting honest concern as abuse. If my own son doesn't believe me with recordings, who would believe me with just words? I've thought about sending the recordings to Linda's family, her mother, her siblings, letting them hear who she really is. But what would that accomplish? Marcus has already decided she's right, already decided I'm the problem. Sending recordings to her family would just look vindictive, would just prove Linda's point that I'm dramatic and cause problems, would just make Marcus defend her more. I've thought about cutting Marcus out of my life completely, just accepting that I've lost my son to Linda's manipulation, that he's chosen her version of reality over mine, that I'll never have a relationship with him or Owen as long as Linda is there. But he's my only child, my only family. The thought of cutting him off permanently makes me feel like I'm dying. Even knowing he doesn't believe me, even knowing he takes her side, I can't let him go. I've started going to therapy, told the therapist everything, played her some of the recordings. She was horrified, said it was textbook emotional abuse, said Linda was a narcissist who had successfully isolated me and turned my son against me, said the fact that Marcus heard the recordings and still took Linda's side showed how deeply Linda had manipulated him, how thoroughly she convinced him that I was the problem. The therapist said I needed to accept that Marcus might never see the truth, that some people are so deep in a narcissist's control that they can't see reality anymore, that Linda had spent 20 years building a narrative about me being oversensitive, dramatic, difficult, that Marcus believed that narrative more than he believed his own mother, that I couldn't force him to see it, could only protect myself and grieve the relationship I'd lost. But how do you grieve someone who's still alive? How do you accept that your son is gone when he's still here, still calling, still inviting you to dinner? How do you reconcile the child you raised with the man who listened to recordings of his wife calling his mother worthless and decided the wife was right? I don't know how to do that. Don't know how to let go while still holding on. I look at photos of Marcus as a child, the little boy I raised, the son who used to hug me and tell me I was the best mom in the world, the teenager who came to me with his problems, the young man who cried when Robert died and said he didn't know what he'd do without me. Where did that person go? When did Linda's version of me replace the mother he actually had? When did her voice become louder in his head than his own memories?
I've accepted that I'll never have a normal relationship with Marcus again. That Linda will always be there, filtering everything I say through her lens, turning every conversation into proof of my sensitivity. making every holiday about my inability to accept her honesty. She won. She spent 20 years methodically destroying my relationship with my son, and she won. I have recordings proving her abuse, and it didn't matter, because she'd already convinced Marcus that my reality wasn't real. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd recorded her from the beginning, if I'd caught her first cruel comment 20 years ago. Would Marcus have believed me then? Would he have seen her for who she was before he married her, before they had a child together, before his entire life was built with her? Or would he have dismissed it even then? Told me I was being oversensitive about one comment. Told me not to make something out of nothing. I'll never know. All I know is that I spent 20 years being tortured by my daughter-in-law, and another 3 years collecting proof of that torture. And when I presented that proof to my son, he looked at me and said, "She's right. You are too sensitive. Stop trying to break up my marriage." Those words echo in my head constantly. My son choosing his abuser over his victim? My son hearing his wife call his mother worthless and deciding that was honest feedback, not cruelty. The recordings sit on my phone. 43 files I can't delete, but can't listen to. Proof that doesn't matter. Evidence that changed nothing. I thought documentation would save me. Thought if I just showed Marcus the truth, he'd finally see. But you can't force someone to see what they're determined not to see. You can't make someone believe you when they've already decided to believe someone else. So this is my story. 20 years of emotional abuse from my daughter-in-law. 20 years of being told I was oversensitive when I complained. 3 years of secretly recording proof. And the moment I played that proof to my son, the moment I showed him exactly what his wife had been doing to me, he listened to every word and said, "She's right." That's the part that breaks me. Not Linda's cruelty. I survived 20 years of that. It's Marcus's response to the proof. His decision that 43 recordings of abuse were actually 43 recordings of honest feedback that I couldn't handle. His choice to believe that I was the problem, that I needed to be less sensitive, less dramatic, less difficult, more accepting of Linda's honesty. I haven't seen Owen in 4 months. Not since I played Marcus the recordings. Linda has made sure of that. When I ask to see him, there's always a reason it doesn't work. He has sports. He has homework. They have plans. Maybe next month. Maybe next time. Never. The truth is, never. Linda has finally accomplished what she's wanted for years: complete separation of me from my grandson. And Marcus allows it because he believes she's protecting Owen from my drama. Owen is 10 now, old enough to notice I'm gone, old enough to ask questions. I wonder what Linda tells him. Probably that Grandma is getting old and forgetful, that Grandma gets upset easily, that it's better to give Grandma space. She's rewriting our relationship in his mind, just like she rewrote my relationship with Marcus. By the time Owen is grown, he'll probably have the same view of me that Marcus does. Difficult, oversensitive, dramatic, a burden the family tolerates out of obligation. I've thought about reaching out to Owen directly, writing him letters, calling him, trying to maintain some connection. But Linda monitors everything. She'd intercept letters, screen calls, and anything I said would be used as proof of my inappropriate behavior, proof that I'm overstepping, proof that I'm the problem. So I stay silent. Let Linda erase me from Owen's life the way she's wanted to since he was born. The holidays are coming. Thanksgiving is in 3 weeks. Marcus called yesterday to invite me, said they'd love to have me, said it wouldn't be the same without me, said Linda specifically asked him to make sure I knew I was welcome. All lies. Or not lies exactly. Marcus believes them. But Linda didn't ask him to invite me because she wants me there. She asked because refusing to invite me would make her look bad. She wants me there so she can be magnanimous, so she can show everyone how patient she is with difficult Nanny, so she can make comments that sound sweet to everyone else but cut me to the bone. I told Marcus I'd think about it. He said, "Mom, please come. It's been 4 months. We miss you. I miss you." He might even believe that. Might miss the version of me that doesn't complain about Linda, the version that accepts being called worthless and stupid and embarrassing without making it an issue, the version that smiles and nods and lets Linda's cruelty wash over me without recording it or calling it out or asking my son to protect me. He doesn't miss me. He misses the mother who knew her place. If I go to Thanksgiving, here's what will happen. Linda will hug me at the door and say, "Nanny, we're so glad you could make it. We were worried you'd be alone," making it clear I have nowhere else to go. She'll comment on what I'm wearing. "That's a lovely sweater. Very comfortable looking," meaning frumpy and old. She'll seat me away from Marcus. She'll steer conversations away when I try to participate. She'll correct me when I talk about the past. "Actually, Marcus, your mother is misremembering. It was," making me look confused, forgetful, declining. And if I say anything, if I show any hurt or frustration, Marcus will take me aside and say, "Mom, Linda is trying. You're being difficult." Because in his mind, Linda inviting me to Thanksgiving despite how difficult I am is her trying. Her allowing me into her home is generosity. Her tolerating my presence is kindness. And anything less than grateful acceptance from me is proof of my sensitivity, proof that she's right about me. So I probably won't go. I'll tell Marcus I'm not feeling well. He'll say, "Okay, Mom, feel better. We'll miss you." And he'll tell Linda I'm not coming, and she'll say, "That's too bad. I really wanted her here." And Marcus will believe she means it, will believe she's disappointed, won't see the relief in her eyes, won't see the satisfaction of having successfully driven me out of another family event, won't see that this is what she's wanted all along. I'll spend Thanksgiving alone, in my house. The house Linda wants me to sell so I can move into senior living. I'll eat a simple meal, maybe watch a movie, try not to think about Marcus and Linda and Owen sitting around their table without me. Try not to imagine what Linda is saying about me in my absence. It's sad. She isolates herself. We invite her, but she always has an excuse. I worry about her being alone, but what can we do? Making herself the concerned daughter-in-law, making me the difficult mother-in-law who chooses to be alone. This is my life now, 71 years old, alone. Estranged from my only child, not because I did something wrong, but because I refused to keep accepting abuse silently, because I recorded proof and presented it and was told that proof didn't matter,
that my perception was wrong, that abuse was actually honesty, and I was too sensitive to handle it. This is what happens when you speak up about abuse and no one believes you, when the proof doesn't prove anything, because people have already decided you're the problem. I keep the recordings on my phone. Listen to them sometimes when I start to doubt myself, when I start to think maybe Marcus is right. Maybe I am oversensitive. Maybe Linda's cruelty is actually concern and I'm misinterpreting it. Then I hear her voice saying, "You're worthless," and "Marcus only tolerates you," and "you should disappear." And I know I'm not wrong. I know I didn't imagine it. I know I'm not oversensitive. I know what abuse sounds like. And 43 recordings prove it. But proof doesn't matter when no one wants to see the truth. Marcus doesn't want to see that his wife is cruel. He doesn't want to admit he married someone who would systematically torture his mother for 20 years. Doesn't want to face that he chose her over me every time. Doesn't want to acknowledge that he failed to protect me. So he reframes it, makes Linda the honest one and me the sensitive one, makes her the victim of my misunderstanding and me the perpetrator of drama. It's easier for him that way. So that's my story. I recorded 20 years of abuse from my daughter-in-law, Linda. 43 recordings of her calling me worthless, stupid, a burden, an embarrassment. 43 recordings of her trying to convince my son I'm losing my mind. 43 recordings of systematic emotional abuse. I played them all for my son Marcus, and he listened to every single one and said, "Mom, she's right. You are too sensitive. Linda's just being honest. Stop trying to break up my marriage." And now I sit in my house alone. No son, no grandson, no family. Just me and 43 recordings that prove I'm not crazy, but couldn't prove I'm the problem. Because sometimes proof doesn't matter. Sometimes people believe what they want to believe. And my son wants to believe his wife is honest and his mother is difficult. So that's what he believes.
Last week, something happened that made everything worse. I got a call from my neighbor, Margaret. She'd seen Marcus and Linda at the grocery store. Said she went up to say hello, asked how I was doing. Marcus said I was fine. Margaret said she mentioned she hadn't seen me in a while, asked if I was traveling. And Linda said, "Nanny's been struggling lately. Memory issues. We're monitoring it closely. She gets confused sometimes and makes up stories. It's very sad." Margaret called me immediately after, asked if I was okay, if I was really having memory problems. I said no, I was fine. My mind was sharp. Linda was lying. Margaret hesitated, then said, "Honey, I believe you." But Linda sounded very convincing, very concerned. If I didn't know you well, I would have believed her completely. That's when I realized what Linda was doing. She was laying groundwork, spreading the narrative that I'm declining mentally, that I make up stories, that I'm confused. She's preparing everyone so that when she finally convinces Marcus to put me in a facility, no one will question it. Everyone will have heard about poor Nanny with her memory problems. Poor Nanny who makes up stories about Linda being cruel. Poor Nanny who's clearly not able to live independently anymore. Linda is systematically destroying my credibility with everyone who knows me, and she's doing it under the guise of concern, of caring, of being a dutiful daughter-in-law worried about her husband's aging mother. I called Marcus,
told him what Margaret said, told him Linda was lying about me to neighbors. He sighed. Mom, Linda is not lying. She's concerned. You have been more forgetful lately. You repeat yourself. You get confused about dates and times. She's just being honest with people who ask about you. I said, I'm not forgetful. I don't get confused. Linda is making things up to make me look incompetent. He said, this is exactly what Linda means. You're getting paranoid, thinking people are conspiring against you. That's a sign, Mom. A sign? Of what? Of declining mental health? Of dementia? Of being unfit to make my own decisions? Linda has convinced Marcus that my awareness of her manipulation is actually proof of mental decline, that my insistence I'm fine is denial, that my recordings of her abuse are evidence of paranoia. She's turned everything inside out, made my sanity the question instead of her cruelty. And Marcus believes her. I went to my doctor, asked for a full cognitive evaluation, told him my family was claiming I had memory problems and I wanted documentation that I was fine. He ran tests, memory tests, cognitive function tests, everything. The results came back perfect. He said my cognitive function was excellent for my age. No signs of dementia, no signs of decline. I was completely mentally sound. I asked him to document it officially, to write a letter stating I was cognitively healthy. He did. I sent the letter to Marcus, called him and said, I got evaluated. The doctor says I'm completely fine. No memory problems, no cognitive decline, nothing. I thought this would prove Linda was lying, would show him she'd been spreading false information about my mental health. Instead, Marcus said, Mom, going to the doctor and demanding cognitive tests because you're paranoid about what Linda said is not normal behavior. It's concerning behavior. It proves you're not thinking clearly.
I can't win. Everything I do to prove I'm fine becomes evidence that I'm not fine. If I stay silent about Linda's lies, she spreads them unchecked. If I confront them, I'm paranoid. If I get medical proof I'm healthy, I'm behaving concerning. Linda has created a perfect trap. She's made it impossible for me to defend myself without looking exactly like what she claims I am. Difficult, paranoid, declining, out of touch with reality. My therapist says this is called crazy making. It's an abuse tactic where the abuser gaslights you so thoroughly that any attempt to prove you're not crazy makes you look crazier. Linda is a master at it. She's been doing it for 20 years, but it's escalating now. Now that I've challenged her, now that I've tried to expose her, she's doubling down, making sure that if I keep trying to tell people the truth, everyone will dismiss it as the confused ramblings of a declining old woman. I've started documenting everything. Not just Linda's words, but my own competence. I keep a detailed daily journal. What I did each day, conversations I had, appointments I kept, bills I paid, all of it dated and detailed. Proof that my mind is sharp, that I'm managing my life perfectly well, that there's no confusion or decline. My therapist said to keep doing it, that if Linda ever does try to have me declared incompetent, I'll need evidence that I'm not. The fact that I'm preparing for legal battles over my own competence is surreal. I'm 71 years old. I should be enjoying my retirement, spending time with my grandson, having peaceful dinners with my son. Instead, I'm collecting evidence of my own sanity, recording abuse, fighting to prove I'm not crazy, while being told that fighting to prove I'm not crazy is exactly what crazy people do. This is what Linda has reduced my life to.
I've thought about moving away, leaving this town where Linda is spreading lies about me, starting over somewhere new where no one knows her narrative. But I'm 71. Where would I go? And moving would just confirm what Linda says, that I'm unstable, that I'm running away from reality, that I can't handle honest feedback, so I isolate myself. She'd spin it as more proof of my decline. Poor Nanny moved away, couldn't handle being close to family anymore. Very sad what's happening to her. I've also thought about fighting back publicly, writing a letter to everyone we know, explaining what Linda has done, including excerpts from the recordings, letting people hear her cruelty in her own words. But my therapist advised against it, said it would look vindictive, said people would side with Linda and Marcus, said it would just prove Linda's narrative that I'm dramatic and cause problems, said the only way to win is not to play. But not playing means accepting defeat, means letting Linda win completely. So I'm trapped. I can't fight back without looking crazy, can't stay silent without Linda's lies spreading unchecked, can't prove I'm competent without my attempts to prove it being used as evidence I'm not, can't maintain my relationship with Marcus without accepting abuse, can't cut Marcus off without losing my only family. Every option leads to losing. Linda has made sure of that.
Yesterday was my birthday, 71 years old. Marcus called in the morning, said happy birthday, asked what I was doing to celebrate. I said probably nothing, just a quiet day at home. He said, "Mom, that's depressing. You should do something special. Go out to dinner, see friends." I said most of my friends have died or moved away, that quiet days at home are fine. He said, "See, this is what Linda means. You're isolating yourself. That's not healthy." Everything I do is evidence of the narrative Linda has created. I stay home because I'm isolated and declining. I go out because I'm trying too hard to prove I'm fine. I'm happy because I'm in denial. I'm sad because I'm depressed and need help. There's no right answer, no way to just be a normal person living a normal life. Every action is analyzed through Linda's lens and found concerning. Marcus didn't invite me to dinner for my birthday, didn't offer to come visit, just called to tell me staying home alone was depressing. When we hung up, I cried. Not because I was alone on my birthday. I've been alone before. But because my son called to tell me my loneliness was my own fault, that I was choosing isolation, that Linda was right to be concerned about me. He called to judge me, not to comfort me, not to offer to be with me, not to acknowledge that maybe I'm alone because his wife has driven me away from the family, just to confirm that my aloneness proves Linda's point. I thought about the recordings again, thought about the one where Linda said, "Marcus only tolerates you out of obligation." At the time, I thought that was a lie, that Marcus loved me, that our relationship was real. But maybe Linda was telling the truth in that recording. Maybe Marcus does only tolerate me out of obligation. Maybe he doesn't actually want a relationship with me. Maybe he wishes I would just fade away so he doesn't have to deal with the complicated feelings of having a mother his wife hates. Maybe Linda was honest about that even while being cruel. That thought makes everything worse. Because if Marcus only tolerates me, then I've already lost him years ago. And I've been fighting for a relationship that only exists in my imagination. Fighting for a son who stopped being my son the moment he chose Linda. fighting to prove abuse to someone who doesn't care if I'm being abused because he only tolerates me anyway. If that's true, then what am I fighting for? What's the point of any of this? But I can't accept that. Can't accept that I raised a child who doesn't love me, who only maintains contact out of obligation, who listens to his wife call his mother worthless and agrees. That's not the Marcus I raised. That's not the little boy who hugged me and told me I was the best mom. That's not the young man who cried at his father's funeral and said he needed me. Something happened to him. Linda happened to him. She changed him, manipulated him, turned him against me, and I have to believe that somewhere inside, my real son still exists.
But what if he doesn't? What if this is who Marcus really is? What if I've been making excuses for him the same way I made excuses for Linda's cruelty in the early years? What if I'm in denial about my son, the way I was in denial about my daughter-in-law? What if the truth is that Marcus is a grown man who chose to believe his wife over his mother because that's the easier, more comfortable choice? What if there's no manipulation? What if he just doesn't care enough to believe me? My therapist says I need to accept that I can't change Marcus. Can't make him see what he doesn't want to see. Can't force him to choose me over Linda. That the only thing I can control is my own response, my own boundaries, my own decision about whether to keep subjecting myself to this situation. She says I need to decide what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not, and then stick to that decision regardless of what Marcus does. I know what I'm not willing to accept. I'm not willing to accept more abuse from Linda. Not willing to sit at her table and let her make comments that everyone else thinks are loving, but I know are cruel. Not willing to let her gaslight me in front of my family. Not willing to pretend everything is fine when it's not. Not willing to keep being the problem in her narrative. Those boundaries are clear. But what I'm not sure about is Marcus. Am I willing to accept a relationship with him that requires accepting Linda's presence and influence? Am I willing to have a son who doesn't believe me? Who takes his wife's side over mine? Who thinks I'm oversensitive and dramatic? Am I willing to take scraps of his attention and affection, knowing he only gives them out of obligation? Am I willing to be tolerated instead of loved? I don't know. Part of me says no. Says I deserve better than that. Says I should cut him off completely and grieve the relationship I've lost. That maintaining contact just prolongs the pain. That every interaction with him just reinforces that he doesn't believe me or protect me or choose me. That I should walk away with dignity instead of begging for crumbs from my own son. That's what my head says. But my heart says he's my son, my only child, the baby I carried and birthed and raised, the person I love most in the world. And I can't cut him off, can't accept never seeing him again. Can't accept that this is how our story ends, even knowing he doesn't believe me, even knowing he chooses Linda, even knowing I'm only tolerated. I can't let go. Maybe that makes me weak. Maybe that makes me pathetic. But it's the truth.
So I exist in this limbo, not fully in Marcus's life because Linda controls access, not fully out of his life because I can't make myself leave, just lingering on the edges, taking phone calls where he judges my choices, declining invitations where Linda would torture me, missing my grandson grow up, growing older and more alone, living with 43 recordings that proved nothing except that proof doesn't matter. This is my reality now. Sometimes I wonder what Linda gets from this. Why does she hate me so much? What did I ever do to her? I've asked myself this question for 20 years, replayed our first meeting, our early interactions, tried to identify the moment I offended her or hurt her or gave her reason to despise me. And I can't find it. I think maybe there is no reason. Maybe she's just someone who needs to have power over people, who needs to tear others down to feel superior, who needs a victim. And I was convenient. Or maybe it's about Marcus. Maybe she sees me as competition for his love and loyalty. Maybe she can't tolerate him having a close relationship with anyone but her. Maybe destroying his relationship with me is about isolating him, making herself his only family, his only priority, his only loyalty. If that's true, she succeeded. Marcus chose her, chooses her every time. I'm just the obligation he maintains out of duty, not love. I stopped hoping it will get better. Stopped hoping Marcus will wake up one day and see the truth. Stopped hoping Linda will get tired of tormenting me and move on to another victim. Stopped hoping someone will believe me and validate my pain. Hope just makes the disappointment worse. Acceptance is easier. This is my life now. This is how it is. This is how it will stay. My son doesn't believe me. His wife abuses me. I'm alone. That's the reality. But accepting it doesn't make it hurt less. Doesn't make the loneliness easier. Doesn't make the betrayal sting less. Doesn't make the loss of my son and grandson less devastating. Acceptance just means I stop fighting, stop hoping, stop trying to change things. It doesn't mean I stop hurting. The hurt is constant. The grief is constant. The knowledge that I collected proof and it didn't matter is constant. That's what I live with every day. People ask if I regret recording Linda, if I wish I'd just stayed silent, let her keep abusing me without proof, kept my relationship with Marcus even if it meant accepting mistreatment. The answer is no. I don't regret recording her. I don't regret confronting her. I don't regret trying to make Marcus see the truth. Because at least now I know. I know that he heard the proof and chose not to believe it. I know that he values his comfort over my truth. I know where I stand. Ignorance might have been more comfortable, but it wouldn't have been better.
The truth is liberating, even when it's devastating. I spent 20 years thinking if I could just prove the abuse, Marcus would protect me, would choose me, would stand up to Linda on my behalf. Now I know that's not true. He won't protect me even with proof, won't choose me even when the evidence is clear, won't stand up to Linda no matter what she does. And knowing that as painful as it is, means I can stop hoping, stop waiting for him to save me, stop believing our relationship can be repaired. The truth sets you free, even when it breaks your heart. So I move forward, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, living alone, managing my health, maintaining my home, proving to myself, if no one else, that I'm competent and capable and not declining. Keeping my journal, keeping my recordings, keeping my dignity, even when my family doesn't keep their loyalty. This is my life at 71. Not what I imagined, not what I hoped for, not what I deserved, but what I have. And maybe that's the final lesson, that you can do everything right as a mother and still lose your child. You can love them unconditionally and they can choose someone else. You can prove abuse and they can side with the abuser. You can be the victim and be treated like the perpetrator. Life isn't fair. Family isn't guaranteed. Love doesn't always win. Sometimes the bad guys win and you just have to live with it. Linda won. She systematically destroyed my relationship with my son over 20 years, and she won. I have recordings proving what she did, and it didn't matter. She convinced Marcus I'm the problem, and he believes her. She's cutting me off from Owen, and Marcus allows it. She's spreading lies about my mental health, and people believe her. She's got everything she wanted: my absence from the family, my isolation, my defeat. She won completely. And I have to live with that, have to accept that victory is hers, that justice isn't coming, that karma might not exist, that sometimes abusers get everything they want while victims get nothing but pain. That's the reality. That's the truth. That's the ending to my story. Not a happy ending, not a just ending, just an ending.
Hit subscribe if you want to hear more true stories like this one.